Hi everybody! Welcome back to Echo. We have reached the final day of Carl's route, and just like Leo's final day, it's going to be a long one, so I'm going to have to split this up into multiple parts. I will warn you before we begin, in addition to the creepy supernatural stuff ramping up this session, there are also going to be some descriptions of sleep paralysis, including one right at the start, so if you're sensitive to that sort of thing, be cautious. With that, having said that, let's get started. And, of course, my dream. I'm running through endless hallways. All kinds of hallways, including one that looks like a space station, and another that looks like a medieval castle. In each one, I run into locked doors. Because of this, I can only move through the halls, never knowing what's behind those doors. Eventually, I wake up, but my dead limbs and heavy head tell me I'm not awake, not fully. I brace myself and shut my eyes again. My heart thumps and stomach churns with the disappointment of knowing I'm still in that fucking bedroom. The one that tells me I'm still stuck in a nightmare that's beyond the one I'm currently in. I feel things move about the room, hear things that sound like whining, crying, and screaming. Then I hear something in the ceiling, moving above me. It has many legs, like a spider that weighs hundreds of pounds. And then I'm free. I hold still as the gradual release of the paralysis seeps through my muscles and joints. At this point, I feel like I've mostly learned how to cope with the nightmares. That thought would make me happy if I wasn't so crushed that I'm still here in this actual nightmare. Immediately, anxiety rises back up in my chest as I realize how fucked up this actually is, how much sense this doesn't actually make. As far as I can tell, we've been drugged somehow and moved to this underground hellhole as an experiment of some kind. Someone in Echo had to have done this. One of the crazy old people, maybe Duke. He probably built this underground maze just to watch us lose our minds, probably getting off to it at the same time. I grip the bedsheets and grit my teeth, grimacing at the ceiling as I try not to cry. That had to be it. This isn't some kind of supernatural alternate dimension. This is real, and someone's fucking with us. We're probably being watched by cameras that are set up in corners and peepholes right now. That idea sends a shiver down my spine, and I glance to my left, scanning the wall for any inconsistencies. We need to get out of here as soon as we can, and the sooner we start moving, the better. I hear a small whining grunt to my left at that moment, and I look over, only to find that Carl isn't in the bed next to me. I stare for a moment at the tangled mess of sheets on his side of the bed, trailing off the side. Carl? Another grunt, then I hear Carl. At least, I think it's Carl. His voice is deep, raspy, and it sounds like he's trying on some sort of weird accent that I've never heard him use. My name. Soiled. Slowly, I sit up, and that's when I see something white sitting next to the bed. Jesus! I jump and slide back on my ass away from it, almost falling off the other side of the bed. Staring at it a few seconds longer allows me to make out the clear shape of horns under a bedsheet. Carl is sitting next to the bed with a white sheet over his head, swaying back and forth gently. What the fuck, Carl? I shout whisper to him, my earlier exclamation sounding way too loud in this quiet room. I look over at Raven, but somehow he's still curled up on the sofa, fast asleep. Returning my attention to Carl, I jump again as I see that he's staring straight at me. Or would be staring at me if there wasn't a sheet in the way. Carl, what are you doing? This isn't fucking funny at all. I push myself off the bed, leaning against it to take the weight off my swollen ankle, now to twice its original size, as I stand in front of Carl. I reach out to take the sheet off of his head, but I hesitate. The horns. They look bigger than they should be. And the voice is so different. Dining. above. Carl? Carl, you're scaring the shit out of me. My voice is weak and it cracks at the end as I lose my nerve. Had this place been getting to Carl more than he'd been letting on? But then maybe he was just sleepwalking? I remember him doing that when he slept over at my house years ago. I reach out again more slowly this time, but again I hesitate. I can't shake the feeling that if I pull it off, it won't be Carl. Suddenly, the horned head shakes back and forth violently, the grunting reaching a fever pitch. Shocked, I fall back on my rear, yelping as my ankle is jolted. I lean back on my hands, watching with wide eyes. The shaking is so wild the sheet starts to slip off of the head, as if whatever is under the sheet is trying to shake it off. I brace myself, watching as the sheet slides slowly from the horns to reveal... Carl. Of course it's Carl. He stares back at me with bleary eyes like he's just woken up. I swallow hard. Carl? Carl, what are you doing? He's silent for a moment, then finally speaks. I know what to do. Where are we supposed to be looking? Anywhere, but I know it's here. I lean uselessly against the dining room table again, watching them. I'm biting my lip, trying not to lose my cool, trying to absorb everything Carl had just told me. You said James Hendricks himself came to you in your dream, right? Carl huffs but doesn't look at me. Yup. And he told you that you had to find... something? Carl gets down on his hands and knees and looks under the stove. I know it sounds stupid, but that's what happened. I frown. You know, I had a dream about a giant spider crawling through the ceiling, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to be searching around for a spider in the ceiling. No, this was different. I've never had a dream like that before. He stands back up and looks right at me. It felt like he was actually in my brain, telling me. I look back at him for a while, not wanting to tell him he's going crazy just like I am. Well, it's kind of vague to just tell you that you need to find something, isn't it? He told me other stuff. Carl moves closer to me, starting to look through the various decorum of the dining room. Like what? Carl lifts up a vase, then looks inside. Said this place is chaos, a leftover memory from the old house. That still doesn't really make any sense. And that he organized it for us into separate sections to help us figure this out and clear his name so we can get out of here. How is clearing James Hendricks' name going to end this? I throw my hands in the air to gesture at everything that this is. Carl bends down to look under the dining room table, then stands up right in front of me. What else do we have to go off on? Hey, I found something weird. We both look over at Raven, who holds up a corkscrew. Carl turns back to me, ignoring the husky. If we find it, that locked door will open and we'll be able to get out. If he's here, why doesn't he just show up himself and do this for us? He said he's weak, that there are other forces in this house that have more control than he does. He can only do so much. I gape at him. Do you hear yourself right now? Carl frowns, then moves past me. What does his name even need to be cleared of? I feel tears starting to sting my eyes again, because now I think I'm the only one here who realizes how crazy this all is. Don't you guys get what's actually going on here? Raven stops rustling through the drawers and looks up at me. You okay, Chase? No! Because someone fucking kidnapped us and put us in this crazy maze dungeon, and we should be trying to figure out how we can get out! It's quiet for a moment as Raven and Carl exchange glances. It's okay, Chase. We're gonna get out of here. I lean my head back in despair, about to cover up my face with my hands when something catches my eye. In the chandelier, a small white envelope is wedged between the glass ornaments. I squint to make sure it's not my watering eyes creating an illusion. Yes, there's definitely an envelope up there, diamond patterns from the crystal cast across its surface. Guys? Carl ignores me as he continues to shuffle through things on the counter behind us. Carl? I found something. I point straight up at the chandelier above me. Carl stops then, finally, and moves next to me, looking up. Is that a letter? Looks like it. Do you think... Is that what you're looking for? Carl gets up on the table, wobbling slightly as he reaches up to pull the envelope from the crystals. With a heavy thump, he drops back down to the floor. I'm still skeptical of everything right now, but as I get a closer look at the letter, I think I start to recognize it. That kind of looks like the same envelopes your mom collected. Carl picks up the envelope, turning it over. Kind of. It just says John on the front. Carl opens the flap to empty out the contents. Isn't that the guy that... Whoa! The letter lights up, and what sounds like a match being struck accompanies the flash. Carl gasps and drops the letter, shaking his hands. It's on fire! Shit, put it out! I stupidly wonder if the lights had somehow set the letter on fire, as Carl starts trying to smother the letter with a sleeve. At that moment, a great moaning sound shakes the walls, almost knocking me off my feet and sending plates crashing to the floor. I cling to the table as the plates fall down from the counter and the chandelier swings above us. The deep groaning coalesces into a scream that makes me clap my hands over my ears. Carl is staring at the ceiling, his eyes wide, when we hear another hissing sound. I jerk my head to look back in time to see a gush of inky black smoke burst from the stove, another scream accompanying it. It rushes straight towards us, and for just a moment I see the outline of what looks like a mouth and eyes in the smoke before it engulfs me. My senses are completely smothered. It feels like something is slamming up against my chest, and all my air is gone, to be replaced by the unbreathable smoke. Its consistency is like water, filling my ears and eyes. I scream into the emptiness, but I can't hear myself over the cacophony that sounds like rushing water mixed with muffled screams and explosions. I fall to my knees, then curl up on the ground into a ball, just praying that the savage thing killing me would stop. Just as I'm starting to give in, something grabs the scruff of my neck hard and yanks me up so violently my teeth clack together. The fingers are unmistakably hooved. The letter, you fucking idiot! Then I'm shoved forward and find myself laying flat against the dining room table. Completely blind, I feel around before finding the letter. I clumsily rip the envelope part, grabbing the letter inside. Then, like a massive vacuum being turned on, the smoke is sucked out of the room along with the horrible screaming and roaring. In an instant, the room is quiet again, and I slump back to the floor, gasping for breath. Carl is right next to me, curled up in the same position that I was. Raven is whimpering, his face in his hands and his ear in the air. Carl coughs a few times, wheezing in the air before he looks at me and the envelope clutched in my hands. What the hell just happened? Are you okay? I can't respond. I lean back against one of the chairs tucked under the table for a moment, gathering my wits. Carl? Yeah? If that James guy tells you anything else, just tell me and we'll do it. Carl breathes heavily in response. Raven, you okay? Raven sits a few feet in front of us on his knees, tongue hanging out as he gasps. Good. You know, that's what I saw yesterday. Yeah, I gathered that. I give a short, humorless laugh. That and also that I'm done asking questions. I just want to get out of here. After a few minutes of catching our breaths, I turn my attention back to the letter. Somehow, it's completely undamaged despite catching on fire. It feels crisp and new, and the ink almost looks fresh. It definitely looks like it came from one of the bins in the crawl space. But if that were the case, then there's no way it could be in the great condition it's in. The letter itself is short, and I start to read it aloud. My dearest John, the militia grows more agitated by the hour, and I fear that they will demand a search of this mansion. If that does indeed occur, I will do everything in my utmost power to hold them off. I look over at Carl, wondering if he just wanted to read the letter instead. But he's looking right at me. They will never find the room I've left you in. Do not fear. Carl moves closer to me, his hand reaching out to grab my shoulder. Carl? But if they so much as try to lay a finger on your head, it will be the last thing they ever do. Before I can even move, Carl leans in and kisses me. I'm just able to get a glimpse of Raven's shocked face before I'm practically smothered by Carl's soft, warm nose and lips. I freeze, my shoulders tensing. It's not that I'm not enjoying it, it's just that the kiss was so unwarranted. I'm not sure how long it lasts, but I never make a move to stop it. When Carl does finally pull back, it's awkward, and he's looking just as confused as I am. Raven sits there, openly staring at us. Carl lowers his ears, his nose growing pink. Sorry, I don't know why I just did that. I clear my throat. Don't worry about it. This place is doing weird things to me, too. Aw, that was cute. Raven, could you help me up? I'm mostly asking so he won't dwell on what just happened. Carl clears his throat. Well, I think the door's open now. Let's go check. We make our way slowly down the hall, Raven just behind us. I lean in closer to Carl's ear so the husky can't hear. So, was that really you? Or did your great whatever take control again? I don't know. I think I was still in control. Just felt like the right thing to do, you know? It looked like you already knew what the letter said. Yeah. I wait for him to go on, but he doesn't. Well, what does he need his name cleared for anyway? Being gay? I don't think people care about that stuff anymore. No, we already sort of knew that. Besides, that was basically a love letter. So what is it that he thinks has ruined his legacy? Carl thinks. I guess the idea that he just allowed his lover to die. I think people believe that he sort of just left John to die, didn't really try to save him. This whole mess seems like a pretty roundabout way to go about that, in my opinion. But like I said earlier, I'm done asking questions. Well, it was kind of nice. The kiss, I mean. Carl looks back at me with one green eye. Yeah? I smile a little. I guess the fact that something had been growing between us since the beginning of the week is pretty undeniable. And now we're here in this crazy alternate dimension with smoke monsters. So, well, fuck it, I guess. I lean forward and kiss his big, soft cheek. Yeah. Carl grins and is about to say something when I catch movement out of the corner of my eye. Immediately afterwards, I hear a dull thump and Carl grunts, his eyes bulging before he crumples, sending me to the floor with him. Oh my god! I yelp as my ankle bangs against the floor and I roll onto my back, teeth grit, straining to reach down to hold my foot. Whatever just hit us is standing over me now. I raise a hand feebly to hold off the next blow. When it doesn't come, I lower it slowly and look up. Jenna? Jenna stands there stoically, holding what looks like a small wooden stool. Jenna? What? How did you get here? Jenna slowly sets the stool down, slowly seeming to recognize me. I lean forward to feel my ankle, the pain radiating from it in hot pulses. Tace, are you okay? What happened to your leg? I sprained it. Hey Jenna, it's been a while. Excuse me for a second. I look over at Carl, who's still curled up on his side, his arms wrapped around himself. Excuse me again. Carl, you okay? Then to Jenna. Did you hit him? Jenna walks past Carl and crouches down next to my leg. This looks really bad. Yeah. Carl, are you okay? Carl grunts and turns over to face us, a hand to his chest. Jenna? What the fuck was that? Jenna looks at my ankle a while longer before standing up and looking around. When it doesn't look like she's going to answer, Carl sits up. How did you find us here? Raven perks up. Yeah, is there a way out? Jenna finally looks down at Carl, and I know the complete lack of concern in her eyes. I came to your house looking for TJ and ended up going to the basement. She looks down the hall again. And I ended up here somehow. I blacked out before I did, so I don't know how to get out. Carl finally stands up, warily eyeing the stool held loosely in Jenna's hand before bending down to help me back up. Your leg okay? He grunts into my ear as he slides my arm over his shoulder and slowly pulls me back up onto his back. Mostly. I think I kind of twisted it up again. Carl grunts again and turns back to Jenna, now with me on his back. Well, that's pretty fucked up to just blindly swing at someone around a corner. No, what's fucked up is waking up in a place you have no memory of going to. Jenna's sharp muzzle points right at Carl, glaring. Carl stutters for a second, clearly not expecting to have Jenna snap back at him. Hey, this isn't my fault. We have no idea where we're at either. Why are you guys fighting? Raven looks innocently between the two of them, his ears perked. It's a good question, and I watch Jenna closely from over Carl's shoulder. She just glares at Carl, arms folded. Did she blame him for this somehow? After a few seconds of awkward silence, Carl speaks up. Well, you hit me for one. I don't know why you are so mad at me. Jenna looks back at Carl, and I see the tenseness in her shoulders slowly loosen. I'm sorry. I'm just a little uptight after waking up here. Hey, you're taking it better than us. Chase was freaking out for hours. I give Raven a side glance. Well, things have been going crazy since you two left the lake. Like us ending up in this fucking nightmare dimension? Not just that. Jenna sets the stool down on the carpet before sticking out her forearm. That's when I see the crusted blood on her fur in the form of 3 long lines. What the? TJ attacked me. What? That sentence doesn't seem to fit together. TJ attacked? Why? I have no idea. The faraway, vacant look Jenna had in her eyes earlier is fading, to be replaced by a more concerned expression I better know her for. He's been losing it ever since Flynn tried to grab him at the lake. I started to feel a little sick to my stomach. Why? He wouldn't tell me. He was just acting anxious, kept looking over his shoulder. But isn't he sort of like that most of the time? Jenna folds her arms, then shakes her head. No. He kept looking around, kept saying he was seeing things. She stops short. Like what? Jenna looks up. Sydney. We're quiet for a while. It seems all the rumors about this town are true. Everyone is crazy. This isn't normal at all. Even in Echo. Jenna looks at Raven. I'm sorry, who are you? Raven grins. No, I'm sorry. I'm Raven. He sticks out a hand. Jenna looks at it before turning to me. Chase, something was going on with Leo too. He kept asking around for you. Then he ran off saying he had to take care of some things. Oh, I don't know why. I try to think of what Leo might have wanted from me, but I draw a blank. It could be anything. Anyway, I've been trying to find TJ for ages. I don't even know what day it is anymore. Tried Carl's house since I'd ran out of any other options. Jenna goes quiet, then reaches into her pocket and pulls out her phone, holding it up, clearly looking for a signal. Just as I got to your house, Carl, I heard popping sounds. Jenna sighs and puts her phone away again. Gunshots, I'm pretty sure, coming from Main Street. Something's been happening to everyone. Jenna slides her hands into her back pockets, looking around. And now this. Wow. So something fucked up is happening all over town. I think about Leo and TJ, and my stomach twists at the thought of them being out there. I can only hope that they were able to get out somehow. At this point, I'm just waiting to wake up. We all are. Yeah, especially after a giant smoke monster chased us around the dining room. What? Jenna looks at me and Carl. Carl glances back at me, as if asking me to be the one to explain the impossibility that had just happened. I take a breath, trying to think of how I'm going to say this. So, I think at this point you're going to have to just go with whatever this place throws at you, Jenna. Yeah, we've all just kind of accepted what's been happening. Well, we have to. Otherwise, it would just be us sitting around freaking out about how crazy this all is and not doing anything about it. And so far, it seems we've at least been moving things forward. Jenna stares at us. What happened? We all stand in front of the wooden door in a half circle, none of us wanting to open it. So, this is all to clear James's name? Seems that way. But why go through all this trouble? I rest on my good foot on the carpeted floor while I lean on Carl's back, wanting to give him some relief from carrying me all the time. Probably because of the smoke monster thing. It's trying to stop him. Maybe it's making all these obstacles? Jenna had taken our whole description of what had happened to the dining room pretty well. She listened silently while I had explained what had happened so far. So, I guess if we can get his story straight, maybe get it out to the town about what really happened, we might be able to get out of here. Jenna eyes the door. You think that there's maybe a reason why this monster doesn't want James to get this information out? We're quiet for a moment. Well, we don't have much else to go on. Again, there's a long pause as we all contemplate what the hell might be behind the door. That pause is broken by a certain husky, though, as his white hand suddenly reaches out to grasp the handle. Maybe we've already done what needs to be done? I'll bet this gets us home. Raven! The heavy door pulls open slowly with an unearthly squeal. For the brief moment that I'm conscious, I see a black square in front of me that grows in size until it takes up my entire vision. The muscles on my back and neck seize up and my teeth clench together as my head jerks back. And then I'm falling. There's a rhythmic throbbing in my head. But it's hard to decide if it's coming from inside my head or outside. The next sense to come back to me is touch. I feel a cold, hard surface under my back. Probably wood, judging by the way my claws sink into it. I shift around a little, but I don't feel like getting up just yet. The smell is musty and old. I'm reminded of my grandpa's woodshed, a place I'd often go when I played hide and seek. The drumming sound continues, and the rhythm makes me think that it's definitely coming from outside my body. It sounds tribal, in a way. Where am I? On the edges of my memory are troubling images of endless halls and rooms, the smell of decay and a noose. But I feel like if I block it out and just go back to sleep, I can erase all of it. I almost succeed, but then something brings me right out of my reverie. Carl! Chase! I grimace, the voice reminding me of something dark, cloudy. Help! The much louder yelp that follows has me rolling to my side, cracking my eyes open blearily. I'm in a dark room, very dark, the only source of light coming from what looks like a candle on a bedside table. A large bed sits next to it. I'm laying near the foot of this bed, and opposite me, I can barely make out a wall next to which is a wooden box. Help! Raven's plaintive moan forces me to my feet, my joints cracking uncomfortably. As I drag my right foot up to stand under me, a blinding pain flashes up my leg, sending bright white across my vision. I let out a muffled scream of pain behind my clenched teeth, closing my eyes as I wait for it to subside. Memories are starting to flow back to me. There's a doorway in front of me, and I start to make my way towards it, hopping slowly on my left foot, holding my right off the ground. I come into a small hallway, one that branches to my left into a corridor of darkness. Right in front of me, however, is a set of stairs. Light glows at the bottom, and I'm pretty sure that's where Raven's voice is coming from. In fact, I'm pretty sure I can hear other voices coming from there as well. I look down at my ankle, wincing as I see that it's gotten even bigger, more than twice its original size. I'm starting to think that it's more than a sprain. As I make my way down the stairs, cringing with every light hop, my stomach starts to sink. I remember now, the weird mansion that we were just in, the doors and hallways and the smoke monster, and the door we just went through. Whatever's happening to us isn't over yet. When I reach the bottom of the stairs, I find Jenna and Carl standing around a tall, brown wardrobe. As I stand there, breathing heavily, Carl turns to see me. Chase! He immediately rushes to my side, his hooves clopping loudly against the wooden floor. I think he's simply coming over to support me, but he wraps me up in a hug. God, I keep worrying that one of us is going to disappear. I'm glad you're here. Yeah, I'm fine. I was upstairs in a bedroom, I think. The anxiety I'm feeling over the whole situation goes away just a little, absorbed into the soft warmth of Carl's body. Over Carl's shoulder, I can see Jenna watching us, her eyes narrowed, expression dark. I'm about to ask her what's wrong when I hear a loud bang from inside the wardrobe. Guys, are you still there? I think something touched me! Jenna turns back to the wardrobe, silent for a moment, then bends down to look at something. Guys? I hear a metallic click, then Jenna jumps back as one of the doors swings open and a black and white blur falls out like a rock. Raven face plants neatly into the wooden floor. He stays there a moment, moaning into the planks before Jenna bends over to help him up. Are you alright? Yeah. I just felt like something grabbed me. I look back up into the wardrobe to find a very bare and empty wooden compartment. I'm inclined to believe him, though, after everything that's happened. Where are we? It's a good question, and now with the excitement over, I take the opportunity to look around as well. Everything is wooden. The walls, floor, ceiling. There's a large rug on the floor covered in colorful patterns and shapes. It reminds me of the art projects we do in elementary school when learning about the natives. There's a big stone fireplace and 2 rug-covered chairs in front of it. Jenna gingerly shuts the wardrobe. So, a log cabin. Does everyone remember where we were before? Yeah, that mansion place. So we're still stuck in this dimension thing. I sigh, rubbing my face with one hand while I lean against Carl with the other. I'd long ago given up on trying to figure out exactly what the hell is going on. Like Carl said earlier, we just have to keep moving and hope we get out of here. What's that sound? The drumming that I had thought was coming from within my head has started up again. Drums? The husky moves towards the wall, which consists of several logs stacked horizontally on top of each other. I can't see anything. The cracks are filled in with stuff. I look around again, this time more carefully. Right in front of me is a large log door, not unlike the one we initially came through. On my left side, separated by the stairs, is what looks like the kitchen side of the room. In it, there's a small table with 2 chairs on either side. There's also a big, black, wood-burning stove next to a few shelves, which are full of pots and pans. Various tools and furniture clutter up the rooms. And there's a window. I pointed out to Carl. Look, let's try and see out through there. Carl pulls me into the familiar position on his back before clopping over to the window. The sound's a bit louder with my added weight. Jenna and Raven follow behind. There's a ledge next to the window, thankfully, and Carl lets me sit on it. I turn to look out the window while the others crowd around me, resting their hands on the wooden bench. The first thing I notice is a flickering light in the distance, about 100 yards away. It casts out across the ground around it. Shadows from rocks and bushes dance about with the movement of the illumination. It's definitely a fire. A large one, probably a bonfire. The blackness around the fire is unnatural, though, just like what I saw through the windows in the mansion. It's inky and thick, and has the oppressive air of almost being alive. No other light comes from what I presume to be the sky, that fire being the only signal that anything exists outside the cabin. A fire? Raven says redundantly. The drumming, it's coming from it. Carl reaches out, but his hand looks to immediately press against something. I reach out too, and feel a solid flat surface where a pane of glass might be set up, but it's clear there's nothing visible there. Observe, accept, move on. Hey, look. I look up in time to see something dark flash across the fire. It disappears into the darkness to the right of the flame, though. What was that? Maybe it was a tumbleweed or something? No, it was jumping, whatever it was. I feel it prickling along my neck, and now I'm not really into the idea of just staring out into the darkness. But then it happens again, and I see what Jenna's saying. The dark shape starts at the left side of the fire before pressing in front of it. Pressing? Passing, that's the word. I get a brief impression of a tail and ears, legs and arms pumping as if jogging in place. It moves past the flames, then disappears into the darkness again. Something's out there. We continue to watch, but the drumbeat dies down, and after about a minute, it's clear nothing's moving around out there anymore. What was that? Well, Carl Carl glances at Jenna. The drum beat sounds kind of native, don't you think? He's clearly waiting for Jenna to confirm. Maybe. There's an awkward silence before Carl coughs. Well, let's think. We weren't able to get out of the mansion until we found that letter, right? He looks at me. Yeah. I respond automatically. Well, if that's the case, then maybe we have to find something in here, right? I guess that would make sense. But what are we supposed to find? Another letter? Yeah, didn't someone tell you about finding something that would open the door? Yeah, and I think it makes sense that whoever set this up would do it in the same way, right? I sigh and stop staring at the window, my back sore from the twisting motion. I sit straight up on the bench and look back into the cabin. Well, if we're supposed to find another letter, there's a bunch of places to hide it. Maybe we should try the door first? Jenna walks over to the door and looks it up and down, before reaching down to slide back a rusty bolt. To my surprise, it moves with only a little resistance. Are we sure we want to go out there? I mean, we don't know who that is running around. Jenna hesitates, then heaves back on the door. But it doesn't budge, not even an inch. Jenna sighs. Raven bounds up next to Jenna before enthusiastically yanking back on the handle as well. Again, the door holds fast. Of course. Jenna stares at the door a moment before turning to us. Let's take a look around upstairs. If we're supposed to find something, then we should start from top to bottom. Agreed. Carl bends down to pick me up, but I rest a paw on his shoulder. Wait, I don't want you to have to drag me everywhere, let alone up and down the stairs. He stops mid-stoop, his face level with mine as he looks at me. You sure? I don't really want to leave you alone down here. As I look back at him, I can't help but note the differences that I noticed earlier. His face has harder lines, his fur duller, eyes somehow deeper. Wiser? You alright? I break out of my trance and blink. Yeah. Yeah, I'll just stay down here and look around where I can. Jenna and Raven are already making their way up the stairs, Raven going on about how his family used to have their own log cabin. Alright, but shout if you need anything. I smile. At least I feel like some parts of Carl are still familiar. After the ram heads up the stairs, I lean back on my little bench, letting my head tilt back as I close my eyes. Even in this new environment, everything is still feeling surreal. I've come to welcome the feeling, though. It's a nice little barrier to everything that's happening right now. In some ways, I can still pretend that this is a dream. Hell, even now I'm thinking it's a dream, that I'm somehow stuck in one of my paralyses. Maybe I'm in a hospital right now and they're trying to figure out how to pull me out of it. That thought has me feeling like I'm being watched and the fur prickles around my neck. I guess it would be kind of awkward if all of those doctors are watching me right now. Maybe Carl and Jenna are there too, then Leo and Flynn and TJ. The feeling gets stronger, so I turn back around to look out the window. It's still silent, and the lonely little flame in the distance continues to flicker around the rocks and sagebrush. It makes me wonder how endless this world is. If we're in some type of ghost dimension being manipulated by what are basically ghost gods, then will this whole ordeal be never-ending? The thought twists my stomach, so I stop thinking about it. I turn back around and force my eyes to start scanning the kitchen from top to bottom, looking for something, anything that might stand out. I assume I'm looking for a letter. But again, if the rules are limitless in this world, then there's no telling what it might be that we're supposed to find next. I think about vocally asking James, or whoever the hell it is, for some help. Excuse me. Maybe some kind of hint at least, but there's no way I'm going to do that without the others with me. I'm thinking about pushing off the bench to start limping around the kitchen when a small scratching sound catches my attention. I hold still, then lean back, tilting my ear towards the sound. It's muffled and a bit distant, but it's coming from directly to my left. Is it happening on the outside of the cabin? My fur prickles and I think about calling Carl. I can hear the three of them stomping around, talking to each other in muffled voices from upstairs. I turn around again, this time a little more tentatively. The dancing bonfire continues to glow quietly, no other movement aside from the shadows. This time a rustling sound comes from that same spot, and I instinctively turn my eyes in its direction. Carl? I raise my voice only a little bit, but their conversation carries on upstairs as if I hadn't said anything. I look up at the ceiling, then back out the window. The rustling sound continues, this time in earnest, as if something's twisting around in the brush. It's coming from just out of view of the window, right at the base of the house. I hold my breath and lean forward, stretching my neck up to get a better angle and peer down into the darkness. It's really too dark to see much, or at least that's what I was thinking. Almost as if it has its own glow, a bright, white face stares back at me from the blackness. My mind blanks and my body seizes up. And just like that, I'm in a paralysis, forced to stare down at the white face, the black eyes. It's as if the thing is holding me with its gaze, but as it does, its features become more definable. I see tall ears, a long, pointy muzzle, a band of some type across the thing's forehead. Stop it. Something says it very deliberately through their teeth right in my ear. At the same time, the face flickers and fuzzes like a TV picture with bad reception. The head twitches and shifts, then the muzzle opens and... The cackle that comes forth is all at once terrifying and familiar, and at that moment I'm released. My vocal cords start working at the same time, and I let out a scream as I fall backwards. I land on the wooden floor with a loud thud that shakes the pots and pans on the shelves. The room spins, and I feel like I'm coming right out of a dream, like I'd been sleeping for ages. The next thing I know is that I'm surrounded by the three faces of my friends, all looking down at me. Carl grabs me under the arms and pulls me into a sitting position, his face worried. But there's something else, too. Anger? What happened? I'm startled by his abruptness, and I stammer through an answer. It was a face, out the window. What did it say? Carl, what are you doing? Raven approaches the ram gently, his ears falling. Carl glances at the husky, then at Jenna, who's been silent so far, then back at me, slowly letting go. Sorry, I was just worried about you. What did you see? Did it say anything? It takes me a moment to find my voice. No, it didn't say anything, just laughed. What did it look like? A fox, maybe? Had a band over his head. Carl's eyes narrow. Hey, I found something! We all look up at Raven as he holds up a white piece of paper. What is that? Carl stands up, staring hard at the paper in Raven's hand. I don't know. Looks like a photocopy of a newspaper. Let's see. Raven turns towards the candle sitting on the desk. Jenna stands behind him. Masada boy missing after... Whoa! Raven flinches back as the paper catches fire, illuminating the entire cabin room. Our shadows dance across the log walls. The paper, which Raven had dropped, flutters to the floor, a tongue of angry flame eating it up completely before it hits the floor. We all stare at the smoldering flake of ash on the ground. Raven, are you kidding me? What? I wasn't even that close to the candle! That might have been what we needed. But Raven stares at his hands, looking forlornly between them and the candle, or it seems to flicker innocently on the table. I rest my face on my hands. Well, what do we do now? He wasn't near the candle. I pull my head out of my hands, not because of what Jenna said, but because of the way she said it. Huh? I've got a side angle here. You were at least 2 feet away. There's a brief silence. Jenna, what are you talking about? I don't know, Carl. What am I talking about? Jenna turns to the ram, eyes narrowed, teeth just slightly bared. I look at Carl. He's frowning, a concerned look on his face. Jenna, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm saying there's no way that candle burned that paper. Carl's concerned expression deepens, but there's also a hint of condescension there. What else could have done it, Jenna? This time the silence is heavy. I'm baffled by the interactions they've been having so far, and judging by the look on Raven's face, so is he. Hey, guys, I'm sorry I burned it, but maybe we can figure something out from the title. Masada Boy Missing? I look at Jenna. Oh yeah, Masada, isn't that your tribe, or... Yep. I feel my face flush as I wonder if I'm being insensitive, like I think she knows everyone from the tribe. But what does that mean? A lot of people go missing out here. Well, it would have something to do with James, right? How do we know that? I look at Carl. Are you okay, man? You've been acting really weird ever since we got here. I think we're all acting a little different after getting here, don't you think? Carl glances at Jenna. Are we fighting again? Staring at the ash on the ground, something I should have realized earlier suddenly hits me. Wait a minute. That newspaper, it kind of looked like something that came out of the crawlspace tubs. What do you mean? I was looking through some artifacts that Carl's family saved from way back when, for that project I was doing. It seems like years ago at this point. I snap my fingers. And some of the stuff was missing from it, like pages ripped out from Carl's mom's notes that had photocopies of old newspapers. So was that just a clipping from the notes? Maybe? I don't know, but John was native, so maybe it has to do with him? I think back to the small fox I saw through the window, the band across his forehead. Was that John? So the ghost just ripped out the pages to show you in this nightmare world? Why didn't he just point them out to you in the real world? I don't really have an answer for that. Then we wouldn't have to be going through this shit right now. Ghost rules? Raven shrugs. And what if that was our key out of here? Well, they can't just leave us here, right? We don't know anything about where we are or what these things are capable of. So what now? Just sit around and wait for something else to happen? Carl suddenly sighs. Well, I'm gonna look around some more. You guys do whatever you want. Again, I'm taken aback by Carl's demeanor. I've never seen him act like this before. It's like he's a different person. Without another word, he turns on his hoof and walks away. Over the next several hours, we search the cabin from top to bottom. I hobble around the ground floor, careful not to look out the window, even when the drumming starts up again at a few points. I check all of the shelves, under the chairs and tables, and the stove and the pantry, between the cracks in the floor and walls. We don't find anything. At some point, I almost topple over from dozing off, and that's when we call off the search. There's some discussion as to where we should sleep, if we should do it in shifts. Jenna suggests she stay up downstairs while the rest of us sleep, just in case something else happens. Carl suggests that I sleep in the bed upstairs because of my leg, and I have to agree with him. Raven stays downstairs with Jenna, making himself comfortable in one of the chairs. As Carl hobbles up the stairs with me on his back, Jenna watches us the whole way. I sit on the bed, watching as Carl moves about the room, looking behind shelves and under the bed. Carl, I hate to ask again, but are you okay? He looks back at me. Yeah, I'm fine. I just want to make sure everything is safe for you. Thanks. It's just that you seem different, I guess. Carl looks at the ceiling, seemingly thinking. It's difficult to make him out in the darkness. Just like when he had a sheet over his head. I get the weird feeling that who I'm looking at might not be Carl. I think it's just that this has made me grow up. I realize now how useless I've been. This is sort of an opportunity for me to actually do something and help people, you know? Yeah. It sounds nice, but I can't get rid of that nagging feeling that something is off. It's in the way he talks, the way he moves, right down to his facial expressions. I swing my legs gingerly onto the bed and lay back. Carl comes over to sit on the other side. Gonna sleep here too? Yeah, you need me to get around, so I'm gonna be by your side as much as possible. Alright. Thanks. As we lay awkwardly on our backs for a moment, Carl suddenly turns on his side and pulls me into his chest. I'm surprised and turn instinctively so that he's spooning me. I guess it makes sense after our semi-confession back in the mansion. He nuzzles my neck, but again, the action is weirdly unnatural. Even with his big, warm body next to mine, it takes me a long time to fall asleep. I open my eyes, and blearily I can make out the dark cabin room. My heart sinks again at realizing where I'm at, but it's more subdued this time. Guess I'm getting used to my new life. My mouth is dry, very dry, and I feel like I need to find water or I'm not going back to sleep. I sit up. Carl's moved back to his side of the bed at this point, lying out on his back, snoring. Quietly, I get out of the bed, wincing at how creaky the floorboards are. I make my way down the stairs, eyes adjusted to the point where I can barely make out the ledges. When I reach the ground level, I see that Raven is splayed out on the carpet, snoring as well. I shake my head before moving to the kitchen. Jenna isn't there, and I wonder where she might be at. Was she in that other room upstairs? Maybe I just missed her when I was distracted by Raven. Looking around, I see a small cup sitting on the table. I'm almost positive it hasn't been there before, but maybe Raven or Jenna had set it there. Walking over to it, I'm relieved to see that it's filled with what looks like water. I pick it up and sniff at it, not really getting a hint of anything. Tentatively, I take a sip, and immediately spit it out. It's salty, putrid. It tastes like... I jump and some of the liquid splashes to the floor. Gingerly, I set down the cup, looking into the opposite room. Everything is still in the other room. I can't even hear Raven snoring anymore. This time I see the wardrobe move, the door specifically. I stare, wide-eyed. Everything falls still again, but I don't dare move. Jenna? I whisper loudly. It wouldn't make any sense why she'd be in there, but who else would it be? Ghosts, of course. I'm about to take a step forward, toward the stairs maybe, or to at least wake Raven up, but that's when the small door cracks open. I freeze, all of the fur on my body standing up. James? Words die on my tongue as something long and black slides out from behind the door. It dips down towards the ground, and only then does it vaguely take the shape of a foot. Another long, black tendril follows, slightly ahead of the first one. When it touches the ground, it takes the shape of a hand, resting flat on the wooden floor. I choke and start to try and back away, but then... the door explodes open, and I'm just barely able to make out a galloping black shape before it engulfs me. I collapse back onto the ground, twisting, trying to scream, but the thing is completely covering and smothering me. I choke and gag, feeling like I'm being suffocated, my arms pinned to my sides, my legs rigid. As I try to yank away from the thing, it feels like something is freed from my mouth, and I'm able to scream, "Help! Get it off me! Help!" Jeez! The surface underneath me becomes soft, the thing on top of me warm. Through bleary eyes, I look up at Carl, just able to make out the curve of his horns. Carl? I hear movement at the doorway, and I glance in that direction to find Jenna standing there, hackles raised, teeth bared. Jenna? Before I know what exactly is going on, Jenna sprints across the room and jumps on the bed. Carl doesn't even have time to turn around before she snatches him up by the horns and yanks his head back violently. The ram lets out a choking sound as he's dragged back and thrown to the floor. Jenna jumps off the bed after him. From the sounds of it, she lands on him. What follows is a series of thuds and smacks. Weakly, I pull myself to the foot of the bed, still completely disoriented. I knew it, you motherfucking piece of shit! What I see is Jenna sitting on Carl's back, swinging her fists into his head while the ram tries to cover up. You haven't changed at all! Jenna, stop! I roll off the bed, confused as to why I'm so weak. Pain shoots up my leg again, but this time I barely notice it. There's something around Jenna, something big and black, like a shadow, making her look much bigger than she actually is. Her fists swing and hit Carl with a force I didn't think she was capable of. Then she grabs Carl by the horns again and yanks back before slamming his face back into the floor. Jenna! I lunge forward, trying to put myself between the two of them. Underneath me, Carl has gone limp. Just like Jenna, there's something black and shadowy around him as well, but it's fading, moving away. Jenna's still trying to get at Carl, reaching around me and snarling in my ear, a sound that makes my fur stand on end. Then she's gone. I look to my left and see Jenna being drawn back by Raven, his eyes wide with shock. What are you doing? Jenna struggles in the husky's grasp. I saw him! He was trying to fuck the otter! The otter? Jenna, stop! He was helping me! Raven continues to try and pull Jenna towards the door, but she continues to struggle. I was having a nightmare! Jenna's struggling loses some of its vigor, but she continues to snarl in Carl's direction. Raven, please get her out of here! The shadow around Jenna seems to shrink, and her face shows some doubt as she stares at the crumpled form of Carl. After a moment, she seems to let the husky lead her from the room, and I hear soothing tones from Raven as he leads her down the stairs. I turn back to Carl, who has his arms around his head, face still buried in the ground. After a while, I see his shoulders heaving with sobs. Gently, I pull one of his arms back and he looks up at me. This time I recognize his face. I sit next to Carl on the bed, mopping up his face with his bloodied button-up shirt. He sits there silently, looking at his hands while I work. At least nothing's broken. Dude, what happened? I'm not sure if he's talking about what happened with Jenna or just everything. I've been asking that same question since we got here. He looks at his hands again. I felt different. I sit back and look him over, satisfied with having cleaned up most of his face. You were acting different too. I felt like I knew everything. I knew what I was doing. You were acting really confident. I agree and set his bloody shirt off to the side. When I look back at him, he seems so sad and beaten down that I have to hug him. Dude, you're gonna make me start crying again. His voice cracks, but he hugs back anyway. I'm just glad you're back. I felt like I was talking to a stranger. Carl leans against me and sighs. I don't know if I'm glad, though. It's like I just came down from a huge high. I rub his shoulder for a while before I venture forward with my guess. Was it James? I don't know. Maybe. Carl looks at his hands again, like he's questioning if they're even his. I just felt like I knew what I wanted. And when things didn't go the way I thought they would, I'd get really pissed. He's silent for a while. I imagine contemplating what he'd just gone through. Jenna isn't really acting like herself either. Carl looks up at that. Yeah, I felt like whatever was in me, whatever it is, really hates what Jenna is doing for some reason. Carl looks around at the room, scanning it with his dark green eyes. I feel like all of this is some kind of mental fight between James and whatever else is fighting against him. He looks back down at his hands. That's why we have to do all of this. He falls back into silence, and I don't ask any more questions, wanting to let him rest a bit. There is one nagging thought that comes to my mind, though. This is kind of stupid, but what happened back in the mansion? You know, that thing between us. He looks up at me, and I feel my face flush, looking away. I guess I'm wondering if any of that was real. I mean, if it was really you feeling that way. Carl doesn't say anything, so I'm forced to look up at him. When I do, he has a sad sort of smile on his face. Dude, I think that was the only part of me that was real. Despite where we are, despite everything that's happening, that somehow makes me incredibly happy. Happy enough to lean forward and kiss him. He kisses back, and while it's barely more than a peck, it has my entire body feeling warm. He puts his own arm around me after I pull back, and I rest my head on his shoulder. I feel like it's gonna try to come back, though. I look at him. What, James? Whatever it is.
I can already feel it, like it's on the edge of my mind.
Do you think you can fight it? Carl sighs, then looks at me.
Should I?
What do you mean?
I mean, it made me feel amazing, like I could do anything. Maybe we need that?
I frown. I don't know.
Not only that, but I felt like I knew what to do. It might save us.
He stares back into my eyes.
I know it's not really me, but it'll probably only be for the time that we're here.
I look away, thinking.
Then I'll be back to my old self.
He squeezes my shoulder.
But it's important to me what you think. We're in this together.
Well then. If you want to see the outcome of the choice that I don't pick here, you'll just have to read Echo for yourself. But for now... No. Whether or not I made Carl feel good, I can't shake the bad feeling it gives me. I rest a hand on his. No. After everything that's happened, I don't trust whatever it is. Carl watches me closely. Seriously, we need to be more careful. Besides... I lean my head against his shoulder again. We are in this together. We don't need that thing meddling with us to get through it. I feel some of the tension go out of Carl's muscles, and we wrap each other more tightly into our respective embraces. We sit there for a while, Carl absorbing what I just said. It's clear that whatever is influencing Carl, and probably Jenna, is powerful, and we had to be careful. Whatever he decides, I just pray it's the right decision. This is a good point to leave off for now. Next time we will continue on with Sunday. And until then, I will see you all later. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye!